Okay, folks, let's get this show on the road. I have got in my hands the three books I'm going to be reviewing today. They are the Cyberfrog 2 supplementals. So basically, here's what happened. Ethan Van Sciver ran his Cyberfrog 2 campaign on Indiegogo, and then he ran his Second Chance campaign. And I got in on the very tail end of the Second Chance campaign. So by then, he had added a whole bunch of different books to the roster of things that he would be packaging up and sending you if you bought a copy of REKT PLANET. Now, some of these you had to pay extra for, some of these you didn't. For example, this deleted scenes one, you did not have to pay extra for so long as you placed an order for the REKT PLANET book. So, like at the very, very tail end of the campaign, I went ahead and I picked up pretty much all of the book story material that had to do with Cyberfrog 2 REKT PLANET. So I wound up with not just REKT PLANET, but SALAMANDROID, Death Sting. And I got HEARTSICK HORROR. This was the Halloween offering. And then Cyberfrog 2 Deleted Scenes. So that was basically threatening to show various scenes that had been cut, but yet he had a fondness enough for them that he thought, if I can get an artist to draw these and just go ahead and present these in some sort of format, then maybe people like reading what almost might have gotten into Cyberfrog 2 REKT PLANET. So real quick, I'm going to cover what is in each of these supplementals. And I was thinking I'd just do a video on it, but then I thought, maybe make it a little more interactive and see if there's anybody who had any questions about these while I was going through them or had questions on anything else. So feel free to pop in. Super chats are open. You're going to get priority pretty much no matter what, so it's up to you. But let's see. First thing we're going to go through is SALAMANDROID Death Sting. Now, SALAMANDROID Death Sting by far is the best of the three books. Of the three supplementals, if you're going to get one of them, get this one because it's actually pretty essential. And it's essential because it gives background material that you do not expect coming. It's background material you wanted. If you've read Cyberfrog Blood Honey and if you've read Cyberfrog 2 REKT PLANET, this is supplemental material that you definitely want. And part of it kind of answers some questions about Cyberfrog's origins. I'm going to try and be spoiler-free about the whole thing, about all the books that I'm talking about today. But it contains information about Cyberfrog's origins that you didn't know you wanted or that you had no idea you would ever see. So that when I'm actually looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is exactly the kind of supplemental material that I was wanting for a book like this. So Death Sting comes highly recommended, but the only problem with it is that once it gets to the present day, because it starts off in the past, and it starts off by saying that there was a first iteration of the Cyberfrog experiment that the Pandering race sent to Earth. Chelsyn was not the first to carry these Pandering embryos in her cybernetic womb to come to Earth and have them merge with Earth fauna in order to produce the weapons that Earth would need in order to counter the Vespa's invasion. Rather, there was a previous iteration, and when you see that iteration and you see how it almost went right and then went horribly wrong, it's completely entertaining. I mean, that portion of it, which also ties into the origin of Scorpion, who's one of the major characters in the book and in REKT PLANET, it's very fulfilling to see that. So SALAMANDROID Death Sting, if you do have Cyberfrog 2 REKT PLANET and you have not picked up this book, this supplemental book, I highly recommend picking that up. Now, I highly recommend picking it up for the first portion of it. The second portion of it, however, falls a little flat. And let me just remind myself here if there's more than one story or if this is just SALAMANDROID Death Sting. Oh, yeah, it's just SALAMANDROID Death Sting. Plus, there's a few of these, kind of different character trait things. Like here you have a thing on Scorpion, Scorpion, Demenipede, Shockroach, various characters and stuff. And honestly, these come across a little bit Dokumaan cardish. they don't give you a whole lot of information about the various characters, just a little bit here and there. Yeah, I can't say there's a whole lot of that they're going to pick up from any of this that you wouldn't have already picked up from reading Blood Honey and REKT Planet. But one item that I did notice is that we finally get to learn in this one, and I kind of be like, tisk tisk, shame on you. You really don't need to be presenting information in the supplementals that you can't get from the book, or that you shouldn't have already offered in the book by now. But we actually have a character called Dystopia, and if she looks familiar, it's because she's the witch type character from Cyberfrog 2 Red Planet. She's that Anne O'Malley, who is, according to this, is a high school friend of Heather Swain, which did not come across at all in REKT Planet. I mean, it came across more that they ran into each other when they were in Colin's commune. And so I don't know whether this is actually canonical or not. But apparently she was a Cyberfrog villain called Dystopia back in the day, but we have no idea of that just looking at her in REKT Planet. But the sole story that is in here is Salamandroid Death Sting, and it starts by looking at the past and looking at the failed Perdani experiment, and then the failed Perdani experiment, and then jumps to the tail end of Blood Honey, where Cyberfrog is getting himself wrecked, basically, which is what sends him into suspended animation for 20 years. And we get to see it all from Salamandroid's perspective. And this is where the book starts going on a downward arc, which is sad, because after such a strong start at the beginning, to have it start falling off a cliff is kind of disheartening. And the reason it falls off a cliff is because it presents Salamandroid with a choice. Does he abandon the Perdani experiment and just basically go his own way and try to forge his own path, along with multiple other characters from the Cyberfrog mythos, and just try to establish a new world with coexisting with the Vespas or something? Or does he stay true to the cause? Does he stay true to Cyberfrog, whom he now thinks is dead because he just saw him get blown up in a bomb? And the problem is we never see Salamandroid actually challenged by any of that. We don't see him go through a process of coming to a conclusion, even though we see the conclusion. And we know the conclusion just from what we see in Cyberfrog 2 REKT Planet, if you haven't read that already. But to not have that process on display and say, oh, okay, based on this factor, based on that factor, here is the path that I'm going to take. It's almost like that portion of the story, the internal struggle, is completely left out. And it really needed to be shown in here. So we get kind of a hey, here's the setup, here's your choice, here's the struggle I want you to go through. Now I'm not going to show you any of the struggle. You're just going to come to a conclusion. And I feel like there's a lot of meat that got left out of the book in that respect. So that's although I highly recommend Salamandroid Death Sting for the first portion of the book, in which you see the background material, the information you always wanted but never knew you'd get in any way, shape, or form. The rest of the book does fall flat in that respect. So I'm not saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you really do need to have it if you're going to be completist about knowing what goes on with Cyberfrog and Salamandroid and the rest of the crew. I've got Big Robot News today asking, is Cyberfrog more fun to read than ISOM? I don't know how to answer that, really. And the reason I don't know how to answer that is because with ISOM, there is a sense of there was a much wider sense of potential with ISOM than there was in reading Cyberfrog. Cyberfrog is not, it has the potential to become a universe full of books. ISOM was delivered as the first of a universe of books. And a universe has always, to me, been more attractive than any kind of single entity comic. This goes back all the way to my days of reading science fiction, which I used to do voraciously. I don't really read much fantasy or science fiction anymore, but very rarely. Maybe if they were really famous ones, like, well, even Dune was not really all that famous. Well, I mean, it was famous, of course, but it was not a one-off. It was not a one-off. I used to look for series because I wanted to see that the artist, the writer in this case, for because I was reading prose novels at the time, I wanted to see that the writer was making a serious investment in the world that he or she was building. And the way to do that was to see if there was more than one book. If there's more than one book, then yeah, this was something that was going to have some staying power. If there wasn't more than one book, well, then, why do you really want to get your head embedded in a world that you're going to get into there and then just leave? And so with Cyberfrog, you are immersing yourself in one particular story. And it has yet to branch out into the universe of stories that it is threatening to. Now, with the character Lynx that is coming up, that threatens to bring in more properties into the Cyberfrog world. You've also got the SALAMANDROID comic books. And you've got various supplemental books for Cyberfrog. So a couple more of which I'll be covering in this live stream. But knowing that it's just really one story did not generate as much excitement for me as ISOM did, because I knew that ISOM was not going to just be generating more ISOM books. It was going to be generating Alpha Core. It was going to be generating Yaira. And don't forget, we didn't even know which books were going to be coming out of that at the time. It wasn't until, excuse me, it wasn't until after ISOM #1 dropped and Eric saw some of the fanfare, people asking questions about Alpha Core and especially showing tremendous affection for the Yaira character, wanting to find out more about those and basically say, yes, we will be dropping books for those. Now, of course, as time has gone by and we got ISOM #2 and then we got Alpha Core #1, the excitement has kind of dwindled because we realize, okay, just because we're excited about the potential doesn't mean that potential is going to be fulfilled. Oh, goodness gracious. So I would say that ISOM was actually the more exciting read at the time. Now I'm much more invested in Cyberfrog just because when you get to the end of REKT PLANET, you do want to know where it's going next. I mean, with ISOM #2, you have no freaking clue where this thing's going next. I mean, this thing could go completely off the rails in ISOM #3. It's almost like, okay, whatever. Just bring this story to a close already, so we can move on to whatever the next fad is. So I would say that now, today, I am looking much more forward to the Cyberfrog materials to come than I am to the Rippaverse materials to come. Although I do want to see if Yaira turns out to be a decent book. Not really that crazy about getting invested in Bloodruth. I would like to see a second Alpha Core book from Chuck Dixon just to see if the mediocrity is going to continue at that level. I mean, if it's not going to get any better, then I probably wouldn't go on to see a #3 on Alpha Core. And ISOM #3, I just want it to be done. Gooding the Polymath, hopefully I will enjoy that. Horseman, you never know. I've seen a couple of the couple of art pieces that they've released so far, and maybe it'll be good. Who knows? It's just at this point you have such low expectations for Rippaverse that if they do manage to land at least a solid book, then yay, good go team. But I mean, you can't really expect much from them now. True Fan Forum, a grocery list would be more fun to read than ISOM. No, that's not true. I mean, now, well, no, I mean, having done many grocery lists in my life, I can say that's not true. Let's see. Now, I mean, even ISOM #2, there was some excitement around that because you had the wish at least that Eric would improve in his writing. He was being given all sorts of feedback. Unfortunately, most of that feedback he just basically said, I made $3.7 million. I don't need to improve. And that turned out to be not the case. And it reminds me of something somebody said. I don't remember who it was who said this. Maybe it was Dan DiDio. I think Dan DiDio was doing an interview recently, and he was referring back to Todd McFarlane's claim that, look, I can give you a great story, but if I give you a crap artist, I can't sell the story. But you could give me a crap story, and if I give you a great artist, it'll sell the story. And I think it was Dan DiDio who said, that's true maybe for the first or second issue. But as you go on, people will realize that you do not have good quality there. And people will leave because the art will not be enough to carry them forward. And I think that's generally what you're seeing with Rippaverse today. I haven't looked at the Yaira #1 campaign numbers yet, but I do think that they're not going to they're still on their way to not making even the number of purchasers that Alpha Core #1 got. And if that's the case, then that just basically seals the argument on whether Rippaverse's quality is good or bad. It's obviously bad at that point. Now, who knows? I mean, maybe there have been people who have been waiting until the last minute and saving up their money, and now they're gonna buy it and make that purchaser number shoot up at the last minute, or maybe they're gonna go ahead and do a massive campaign, or maybe they'll add in some new products at the end, and people go and buy off of that. It's all possible, but it doesn't look like they've put a lot of effort into marketing their campaign. It feels so lackluster, doesn't it? I mean, maybe it's because I don't follow Eric July anymore at all in terms of him personally. I don't look at his Twitter account. I don't look at his YouTube channel. I'm just not interested in really the things that he has to say. Mainly because a lot of what he has to say is either content free. He's just basically giving opinions on the business and how things work in the comic book world and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't care. I'd like to hear more about the company. I'd like to hear more about the properties. Unfortunately, everything around the Rippaverse is so tight-lipped. Even the Dokumaan cards don't tell you anything. That you don't have anything that... that was one of the things that really blows my mind, is that he keeps saying that he wants to create a universe where people are buzzing about it, where people are, talking and exchanging ideas and exchanging stuff. And I don't know. I don't see that. And maybe I'm just not looking into the right forums, but I don't see anything to talk about because all of these NDAs and whatnot, they're all blocking people from revealing any information about these characters and about where the Rippaverse is going. I don't think anybody knows where the Rippaverse is going. I think this is all being developed on the fly. And it would be nice if we had kind of some idea of stuff coming out in the future, and maybe that will be forthcoming. I don't know if it's just impatience on my part that's just making my enthusiasm drop to such low levels where I just don't have any expectations. And so maybe I'll be in a better place to be surprised. I don't know. Big Robot News today. Do you think Comicsgate and Rippaverse might die out when their YouTube fans get old? I see them as YouTube merch. I think it depends more on the creators than the fans, because fans will rotate in and out, I think. But the creators themselves, I mean, as they, eventually die off, they will be replaced by who? Who can replace Ethan Van Sciver in that? I mean, I know he talked about the other day, if somebody were to assassinate him or something, and who would carry on? Who would be the vice president of Comicsgate or something? And he named John Malin, but I don't know if John Malin's really enough to carry it. I mean, him and Shane Davis combined, I don't know if they could really carry it the way that Ethan Van Sciver's been carrying it, because Ethan's just such a bombastic personality. It's really on the strength of his personality that it's really on the strength of, when you look at Eric July's success and you look at Ethan Van Sciver's success, I mean, it's really both been a lot on the strength of their personality as well as what talents they have to bring. Eric July much more on the personality than on the talent side, and Ethan Van Sciver has much more on the talent side to speak of. But all of those things also were talents that he developed over time. I liked hearing the fact about why he talked so softly in his earlier videos, and how he changed that over time as his fans' tastes changed, I guess. So it was interesting to hear about how he developed the skill set to be the constant live streamer that he is today, as well as being a comic book artist. That's one of the things that Scott Adams recommends too, is you need to build yourself a skill stack. Give yourself a stack of skills that work well together. If you can make yourself into a video presenter as well as whatever it is that you're doing, then you have a way to market yourself. And that winds up being a multiplier. So a number of skills that you can put together that work well together is better than one skill that you can do really, really, really well. Because there's generally always going to be a better virtuoso than you out there, but somebody who is a virtuoso in something and who can combine that talent with various other disciplines is going to be much more valuable. True Fan Forum. These character names are almost painful to listen to. They're not nearly as clever as Ethan thinks they are. Of course, he's not nearly as clever as he thinks he is. I know what you're saying, because when you hear these names, Dementipede, Shockroach, Rumblebee, Traumadeus, they're like one-off names. They're all like just names that are slightly off of the main concept. But one of the advantages to those kinds of names is that you kind of know automatically, you can kind of automatically envision what it is that Cyberfrog is up against. Moreover, don't forget that most of these characters are going to be bug-based characters because frogs eat bugs. And that's just basically going in line with the theme of the character itself. So there is kind of a cleverness in naming things that way. I mean, even Rainbow the Brute, you know that this has something to do with Rainbow Bright, and those couple of subtle changes that he makes in there is what kind of just puts a smile on your face and say, okay, all right, well, what the hell is this going to be? And I think I have resolved to back the Rainbow the Brute campaign and get Rainbow the Brute and Cool Story Bro once that closes out. What else has he done lately? I mean, yeah, there are some times when I know that kind of sense of humor can get grating. I remember when I first read the dialogue about, my name's Colin because I'm calling the shots. I'm like, oh Lord. But yeah, it's an acquired taste, and I think part of what's off-putting about the Cyberfrog Rogues Gallery is the fact that it is made up of so many bugs, and I don't think people respond well to bugs, and so you just kind of get a ooh gross vibe from the Cyberfrog universe in general, on account of not wanting to be around all those bugs. Deathfly, Shockroach, Dementipede, etc., etc. It doesn't sound like anywhere you want to be. It sounds less where you want to be than that portion of Fluorespark where Yaira made her debut, somewhere you do not want to be, in the caption. Big Robot News today. Those cards are a scam. The Dokumaan cards? Oh God, yes they are. Yeah, the Dokumaan cards, my OCD was tempting me something fierce. And if the price of the Dokumaan cards had been like $20, I would have easily plunked down for them, because just knowing that they're going to be a set, and even knowing, and get this is how sad having OCD can be. Even knowing just how terrible those Dokumaan cards are, if the next set was $20, then my OCD would have been like, get them, go ahead and get them too, and I'd be like, no, OCD, don't do this to me, don't. Don't make me get those Dokumaan cards, please. And it'd be like, you need the full set. Oh, gosh. Yeah, those things are so bad, they're funny. But like I said, you get kind of a selection of Dokumaan cards in these kinds of things from the back of Death's Sting. These are definitely not official handbook of the Marvel Universe kind of detail. Oh goodness. All right, let's see what else we got. Big robot news today. I don't know if Comicsgate and Rippaverse will be around in 30 years when everyone gets old. They don't have their books in stores, so new people can find them. Yeah, but once people are on the internet, which is pretty much everybody, then I think everybody is going to come in through that channel anyway. I mean, yeah, it's not the same as being able to walk into a store and just see what's on the rack. But how many people really buy their books that way anymore anyway? I used to be one of the people who, went to a comic book store every Tuesday and Thursday back when they were doing their releases on a bi-weekly basis, which was kind of miserable. And I don't know. I mean, I would see things occasionally on the rack, but by the time I got to be a serious comic book reader, to the point where I was really trying to be discerning about what it was I got, because the prices were going up and I didn't want to be spending all my disposable income on comics, I really got to the point where everything I got was stuff that I knew from the catalogs. And it would not be random. I would not be making random purchases. So when you're looking at people who are going online and they're trying to find out information about comics, and they stumble across these various spheres of independent comics makers, and I'm not sure those spheres are altogether huge as it is. I know, you've got Ethan Van Sciver, and he's got his gang, the Comicsgate Kings, and that's kind of one big sphere that I know of. I don't really know of that many other spheres. I mean, I know there's this Iron Age sphere that includes Razor Fist that's out there, and I know Eric July and his Rippaverse is kind of tangent to that. But I don't know where a lot of these comic artists sit anymore. Like, for example, Rini Strachowski. She used to be on Comicsgate Kings on the regular, and now she's not. So where is she now? I don't know. I mean, I don't see anything about her, and I know she's still doing her Fiendish book, which one of these days I will try out. But I don't know how she's marketing that thing, given that it's not through Comicsgate Kings. I don't know if she's just relying on the fact that she's got a good fan base, or maybe the book is just so good that it is drawing in more and more people. Same thing with Narwhal. Narwhal used to be on there all the time, and I don't see him anymore. So what is he up to? How is what is his latest stuff? I don't know. I haven't really read much of his. Well, no, I haven't really read anything of his. I know I intended to at one point, but now he's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. So I don't know. So yeah, it really, to me, it depends on the creators and who sticks around and who comes to the fore. Because if you got more popular creators who were in the creative space in the independent scene, like, what if Mark Miller, I was going to say Mark Millar, but I've learned since then, what if Mark Miller were to join up with Comicsgate? I mean, then Comicsgate would probably be bursting at the seams with new readers. I think it all depends on maybe who gets frustrated enough. What if Dan DiDio got into it? What if Frank Miller got into it? I mean, if Comicsgate were to become such a brand that it bespoke of quality, that's the important thing. Right now, Comicsgate is more of a brand that bespeaks conservatism, and it speaks of not putting things in front of your kids' faces that you might not want them to see. And although when you look at some of the stuff that comes out of Comicsgate, I look at that and think to myself, okay, well, this is not exactly the most family-friendly material. especially thinking of some of the not safe for work scenes from Quarter at the Reckoning. Yeah, definitely intended for mature audiences. Uh, I, huh? Let me think about that for a minute. Yeah, Comicsgate right now, it's really kind of loose on the brand, and it's definitely not a brand that speaks of quality. It needs to. It needs to in a way that just like Rippaverse right now is is a brand that speaks of lacking quality. Comicsgate needs to up its game to the point where you're getting a good book if you're getting a Comicsgate book, and they're not there yet. So let's see. What are we looking here? Big Robot News today says, I think not everyone is into the post-apocalyptic world of Cyberfrog. Yeah, with The Walking Dead, I think people are a little bit tired of the whole post-apocalyptic world thing. And even, it's funny how many times you see creators devolving back onto that particular theme. Like, for example, Jeff Johns and Geiger. That's a post-apocalyptic world. You've got Rook in his what do you call it? Ghost Machine series of titles. Now those are two different universes. I don't think Rook and Geiger occupy the same idea space. But Rook is also post-apocalyptic. The Earth was collapsing, and so people were being offered being able to homestead on new worlds. It's kind of getting to be a tired idea, but it's something that still remains very much in the zeitgeist because of people worried about the collapse of economies, about the instability of U.S. foreign policy across the world. People see what's going on in the Middle East, and they wonder if the United States and other countries are going to get dragged into that. They see the conflict in Ukraine with Russia, and Obama was all like, oh well, nobody makes war like that anymore. And it's like, oh look, here's Russia making war exactly like that. So maybe Mitt Romney had a point back in the day. But you've got all of these factors, and especially the economic factors and the people who are thinking that Bitcoin's going to save the world, etc. Did anybody notice how Bitcoin's down to like 57,000 now? I probably should get. Well, I've known for I don't know how long that I needed to get myself some. I mean, I'm really irritated with myself that back when Bitcoin was like 25,000. I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go on this trip, and when I come back, I'm going to pick up some Bitcoin. And then I go on this trip, and when I come back, Bitcoin's at 30,000, and I'm just pissed. I'm just seething at that point. I was like, I don't even know if I want to get any now. And now it's at 60,000. So it's like, you idiot, Mike, you should have just gone and gotten some because you would have doubled your money. Of course, now it's going to be less than doubled, but at the same time, there's still people who made out like bandits at the beginning of the year. I know one of my friends has got like really heavy into promoting Bitcoin on account of how much he's made off of that. He got into Bitcoin mining back in the day, and so now he's able to like go out and purchase land and do stuff that he wants to do with his family, as he's preparing for retirement. So he's made out pretty well. I mean, the first time I ever looked into Bitcoin, it was about $5,000 a coin, but there was just, it was still such a speculative thing even back then. There wasn't so much knowledge as yet built up about it that I felt comfortable even trying. And I still didn't really understand the concept of Bitcoin wallets, and I'm not sure I really do now. So one of these days, I will at least diversify some into Bitcoin, but it has not happened yet. It is not this day. This day we inflate. Let's see. Loyal says, "Great to see you back." Well, thank you very much. It's been a while since I did one of these live streams, just because I really didn't have terribly much to talk about. Big Robot News today. I think newer YouTubers in 30 years will sell new comics on YouTube, but call it whatever it is. Well, who knows? And I heard when Bitcoin first came out, people made big money just mining on laptops. Yeah, because they could, and that was part. It's funny. Sticks Hexenhammer says he says on one hand he wishes he gotten back on or had gotten onto Bitcoin back in the day, but at the same time he knew that back when it was, a few cents a coin, he would have sold off when it was a few dollars a coin, and now he'd be lamenting, how much he sold. And I remember I was watching a video of some poor person one time. It wasn't about Bitcoin. It was about some other smaller coin. I think it was like maybe Shiba or something like that. I don't really remember the name of it, but he apparently had so much of that coin at one time and finally sold it off. But if he had held on to it, he would have been a billionaire. Oh my God. I mean, just the fact that some of that kind of potential is available to people. But these days I can't even play the stock market right. I was pissed off about Tesla. I got into Tesla when it was just recently, when it was 185, and I watched it go up to about 200, maybe 210. And I knew I should have sold it then. I was like, should I sell off at least some of it now? I think it's probably topped out, but maybe it'll go higher. I don't know. I just don't really know. And I held on to it, and then it plummeted all the way down to 140. And finally, I was like, shoot, I'm just gonna sell out of this thing whenever it gets back up to 185. And then a couple of days, or no, yesterday, it went all the way to 190. I was like, and then came back down to like 184. I'm like, I could have sold at a profit still. That's the thing about these stocks is like you actually have to watch them like every day, unless you're going like the dividend building route, where all you're doing is putting your money into dividend earning stocks and letting that compound over time. If you're young, that's really an approach you should think about taking. Watch the YouTube videos that are out there about dividend investing and see if that's right for you. Okay, let's see. What else have we got? Also in the Cyberfrog space, we have HEARTSICK HORROR. Now, this was the Halloween offering. So around October was when Ethan Van Sciver was offering this one. And this turned out to be kind of a disappointment. And what's really funny, God, there's somebody who's like doing the lawn outside, and it's starting to really get on my nerves. This turned out to be kind of a disappointment. What's kind of amazing is that he's making another printing of this. He's actually going to make a hardback printing of this, or at least a new edition of it. And I think it was because the colorist was not satisfied with the job that he did on the interiors, which I don't really think is necessarily justified. I think he did just fine as far as the coloring goes. But what was lacking in HEARTSICK HORROR was it's being really a story. And it's because combined with Death's Sting and how Death's Sting wound up being kind of just a, starting out really good and then just kind of plopping at the end, and how this one never really takes off. It never really turns into a story, and that to me is ironic, because I know one of the complaints that Ethan makes constantly about ISOM #1, or just ISOM in general, is that there's no story there. There's no story. Well, there's no story here either. I mean, the back of the second feature in here, which is called Bare Circumstances. There's a story to that one. Basically, a guy comes into town or into the community where Heather and Lily and all of them are living now. And at this point, Cyberfrog has become kind of a member of the community. And you really don't know in REKT Planet how much time passes in Cyberfrog 2. That's kind of one thing that's a little bit falling down on the job in REKT Planet 2, is you don't really know how much time Cyberfrog actually spends with the community before he is attacked by the Vespers. And there is a sense from both HEARTSICK HORROR and from the Deleted Scenes book that he was actually there for quite a while. But it's hard to really make that connection in the book, because there's not a lot of, there's not like kind of a months later kind of tag that goes on, at least unless I missed it in REKT Planet. But in order for there to be a story, something has to change. And I think that was something that a lot of people complained about in ISOM in ISOM number 1 was that even though they knew that it was part 1 of a 3-part, 2-part at least, but maybe a 3-part story, that there didn't seem to be a whole bunch of change that went on throughout the book. You still had Avery in mostly the same relationships that he had at the beginning. His personal attitudes had not really changed. The most you saw was just kind of the sparks of him realizing that something had to change about the way that he was conducting himself because what he was doing was not working. And once that realization came to pass, then the book was kind of abruptly over by that point. And so when people were saying there is no story, I mean, well, you could see just the fact that, you know, he did have this conflict with Santuan. There are things that Darren knows now that he didn't know before. There are things that Avery knows now that he didn't know before. And in those kind of things, you do see some development. Now, HEARTSICK HORROR tries to tell a story, but it kind of falls down on the job because it just shows Heather at various stages of her life meeting Lily's dad, and then marrying him, having Lily, and then, you know, telling him tales about Cyberfrog, and then that fateful day when Matt, or not Matt, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call him Matt because in the Diary of Heather Swain, which is the kind of companion piece to Cyberfrog Blood Honey, and it's considered kind of the canonical Cyberfrog 1.5. In the Diary of Heather Swain, there's a scene where she meets someone named Matt, and behind him is a picture, or is a vision of Ben Reilly, who is Deathfly. And so I thought that Matt was her husband, and that this was their meeting. And it turns out that's not the case, that she actually met a guy named Harold several years later after she had joined the community. And so I get confused whenever I'm trying to think of her husband, because Deathfly obviously makes quite a showing in this book, but it's all really, as I know people on Ethan's live stream have already revealed, it's all really mostly going on inside Heather's head, that Deathfly is the representation of her feelings of abandonment and loneliness. And these things, this grows over time as, you know, her husband disappears, and then she's left alone to raise Lily, and there is this temptation that she has inside her that is growing constantly. And it just basically, it ends with Cyberfrog's return, and she's just kind of questioning, you know, well, is everything going to be okay from now on? And I'm like, all right, well, is it? I mean, you haven't told me anything. All you basically said is she repeats the line from REKT Planet where she says, I've been absolutely terrified every single day since you've been gone. And I guess this is kind of supposed to be an expansion on that scene, going into her head, going more into what's in her head that she reveals to Cyberfrog. I don't know whether she tells him this outright, but it just winds out being a revelation that we kind of already knew. I mean, we learn a little bit about her husband, and then there's also kind of echoes of what was perhaps Ethan's first marriage in HEARTSICK HORROR, where she's talking to Harold and saying, you know, did we just kind of happen to each other, you know, and we weren't really in love, or I don't know, maybe that's something that reflects. A lot of people write from their experience, and so I'm just kind of hypothesizing that, really. So I really wasn't impressed with HEARTSICK HORROR. I mean, graphically, it's a beautiful book, but story-wise, there's no there. And I felt kind of like, okay, why did I even pick this up? Because you don't show any kind of character development. You just show the events of the person's life, which we kind of could have already assumed for ourselves. And the other story that's in here, Bare Circumstances, it's such a thin story that, you know, you pick up this stranger in the woods, and then suddenly things start going wrong in the community. Could the stranger be to blame? Gee, you think? I mean, since everything points to him, it's not really much of a mystery. And the idea that I feel like there is a theme of, how does a society that's supposed to be survivalist deal with the problem of free riders, but it's handled so loosely that it isn't handled in any really satisfying way. So this book, I don't know. I mean, he's doing a campaign now to basically fund the race car stuff, or that campaign I think has already funded the race car stuff that was done with Camelot so far. But it's going to contain this. The new campaign that is up is going to contain this. It's going to be recolored, remastered. Although I think the coloring was adequate myself, and it's going to contain this, and it's going to contain some art, and it's going to contain a story from the last of the Cyberfrog supplementals, which is the Cyberfrog 2 deleted scenes. And the story that is going to be reprinted in there is called Numb, and it too is not much of a story. It basically shows Cyberfrog asleep, and then he reveals that he's horribly angry at having at the Vispas having taken the world from him, and so he goes out to hunt something, anything, something to take his mind off the fact that he's disconnected from Chelsea. He feels disconnected from the world now. He barely feels connected to this new community that he's in, and so he's going to go out hunting. And that's it. So what were we supposed to gain from that? I mean, it is a deleted scene, so it wasn't something that actually made it into the book, but why are you showing us this to begin with? I mean, there is a very real sense to this deleted scenes book that we're getting shown a little bit too much about how the sausage is made. The first book about Merchantville, or the first story about Merchantville, is, I just can't fathom why it is he even sought to include this, because what gets left out is just kind of so banal. The next story, which has to do with, because there's 3 stories in here. Numb was the last story. Then you had Merchantville, which was the first story. And then you have a middle story. And the middle story is actually not bad, because what you have is Cyberfrog playing soccer with the kids in the community. And it shows him becoming steadily more accepted as his, fun personality rubs off on them. So I didn't have so much of a problem with that. In fact, that was a deleted scene that was that was good enough that it probably actually could have been included in the book if it was just a little bit more seamlessly interwoven with it. I mean, the way that it plays out in this particular story it's more standalone. It wouldn't weave well with REKT PLANET as it is, but it was good enough that it kind of made me feel like, oh well, it's too bad that that story wasn't in the actual book, because that would have at least shown a little more solidifying of the relationship between Lily and Cyberfrog, which is something that kind of sort of gets covered in REKT PLANET, but not to any great degree. I mean, you almost get to feel that it's time that really seals the deal between them than any particular one experience. Whereas in this one, but in this one though, in the bowl, see what was it called? Picnic is the name of the story. Let me just read the description over. This is an extended sequence from REKT PLANET in which Cyberfrog completely wins over the kids of the community and also the friendship of Lily Owen. It's fun to see him showing off his powers to the delight of the children, and there's a lot to like about the scene, but the story arrives where it needs to go, with Lily finally bonding with Cyberfrog without these extra 5 pages. And that's true, but I think in REKT PLANET, there is kind of a sense of overarching dread that you just kind of want to build and build and build. And this might have broken that chain. if he had included that story. So it's probably good that he left it out. And it's not, but it is nice to see print in some other form. The other two stories, though, I don't even know what was the appeal of those. And the fact that he is going to take like what was probably the worst of the three, which was Numb, and reprint that along with HEARTSICK Horror. I mean, no, that's the wrong one to pick. I mean, the picnic story would have been the right one to pick, although it's completely out of keeping with the theme of HEARTSICK Horror. I mean, I guess Numb would have been is something more thematically in tune with the HEARTSICK Horror idea of their internal struggles with their loneliness and sense of desperation and disconnection. At the same time, the stories themselves feel lonely and disconnected and kind of desperate to say something, and yet they don't say anything. So I don't know. That one's a pass for me. Biff Bam Boom Comics. Hello, Mike and chat. Hello there. Big Robot News today. EBS does have a really good colorist. Yeah, I mean he does a good job. The only time in Salamandroid Death Sting that I do have a little bit of a problem with the colors is when Salamandroid lets go with his purple fire and like I'm looking at this particular page and he's just letting go completely, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I can't tell anything at this point. In fact, I couldn't even tell because he's got like the letters covering up the separation line between the two dialogue balloons. I couldn't tell that this was like two different panels. So this was an area where it would have been nice to see a little bit more color separation in some way, shape, or form, but I'm not sure if that's. Yeah, he's even got at the bottom, the line of separation is partially obscured by the lettering. And I'm like, damn, it all just looks like one big smush of purple. But otherwise, the colors are good. Let's see. Loyal says hello. Big Robot News today. I don't think Jon Del Arroz is part of Comicsgate, and he's selling his comics and books. I mean, yeah, I looked at one of his books. If you go back and there is one video I did called Why Eric July is Not Getting Good Advice, and I actually cover Jon Del Arroz's Flying Sparks is one of his books, and I show how on the first 2 or 3 pages, it's like, if you see how chock full of errors this book is, you understand why he's saying that Eric July's book, that there's nothing wrong with it. It's because he can't even see what's wrong with his own book. Oh, goodness. So anyway, I am tempted to end the stream right here. I'm going to have to put Loyal says, I'm going to have to put my hat in the ring and put my hat in the ring. I'll put comics on my back. I am tempted to go ahead and end it here because I do have some errands I need to run. It's just that I remember Scott Adams was saying that you need to let a live stream run until it's over an hour. And so I don't know. Is there anything anybody else want to talk about? Because otherwise, I think I'm just going to go run some errands. Biff Bam Boom Comics says, did you get the books I put in your Dropbox? Yes, I did. I've got a few stories that I am looking at already, so it's in the queue. Big Robot News today. You read Ten Napel stuff? I have not heard of that, I don't think. Who or what is Ten Napel? Do they have any Ted Ten Napel? No, that's my first time hearing his name. No. Earthworm Jim Guy. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I recognize Earthworm Jim. I still don't recognize his name, so no, generally not. Oh, one thing I did do recently was I watched the Barbie movie, and that turned out to be surprisingly good. Except it doesn't stick the landing. I will say that doesn't help that one of the Barbies is a dude. You see if you can spot which one. It's not that hard. There were a lot of there's a lot of great material in that movie. It just doesn't finish off well. It kind of reminds me this is going to sound really weird because I'm saying that Barbie is a good movie and then I'm going to compare it to a movie that you probably think sucks ass. But Morbius I thought was a great movie until the very end, because it was really a movie about, it wasn't so much a movie about vampire stuff. It was a movie about how far are you willing to go to save your own life. And it got all the way to the end, and then like in the last 15 minutes, it just completely fell apart. And it just became kind of a rock'em sock'em punch 'em up, here's every stereotype in the book kind of film. So I was really disappointed by that. And so when we get to the concluding scenes of Barbie, I mean, everything seems to go well until it's kind of like, where do we go from here? And it's like, what's the most stereotypical thing we could possibly think of? Let's do that. and it just kind of, turns the movie into something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. Not because it's a bad ending, but because it leaves you feeling like you've seen it all before. And that's what it's hard to find. It's hard to find what feels like originality in a movie or in a series. And sometimes it's just aggravating when people throw in really stupid things. I'm watching this one anime series. I'm not gonna talk about what the name of the series is. And the reason being is because I don't want anything spoiled for me. But I'm watching this particular anime series, and the main character is a boy who looks like a girl and sounds like a girl. For no freaking reason that I can discern. It's like, why don't you just make this character look and sound like a boy? I don't understand that. And oh well, I guess I'm stuck with this character throughout the end of the series. But it's not a bad show. It's just that this one particular element of the character is off-putting, and it distracts, because you're constantly wondering. It's like, why does this kid have his hair like that? Why does this kid sound like, sound like he's being voiced by a girl, which I'm sure he is. It's just, couldn't they find a boy to do it? I mean, really, do they not have enough anime child actors who are boys? Or are they really just scared that, I mean, I know they get like high voiced guys like Justin Briner, who I actually saw at one of these fan expos one time. He does Izuku Midoriya on My Hero Academia, and really, high voice, kind of a high voiced guy, and he's perfect at what he does. I remember, what was it, Full Metal Alchemist? I could not watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because I knew that they had gotten a girl to play Al. They had probably been just basically saying, well, we can't risk that the guy's voice is going to change, because that guy's voice did change later on after he had left the show. They actually had a little clip of his voice after he had matured, and his voice had changed, and it was hilarious. Let's see. Big Robot News today. My sister was a huge fan of Jem, but she was not into Barbie. Yeah, I remember Jem and the Holograms. I know sometimes they use women to voice young boys in cartoons. John Adams says, "What's the show?" Yeah, I'm not gonna say what the show is. There was another show that I kind of don't also want to reveal the name of it, because it was such a good show that I don't want to turn people off from it. But it was another one of those things where they kind of just, I don't know whether this show that I'm watching now is just pandering to the whole LGBTQ non-binary kind of thing, and saying, hey, we need to have something that's going to, attract that particular element of the population. You would think, why wouldn't just regular old stuff attract that element to the population? I mean, there's not like an attraction to out of the norm kind of things. That's just straight across the board. But there was another series I watched that was just about perfect. I mean, I almost wanted to go out and buy the DVD set the moment it was done. And then in the very last episode, they threw in a lesbian relationship just out of the blue, completely out of the blue. Nothing, and the show was like laced with sexual innuendo. So there would have, if anybody on that show had been gay, you would have known. And then very last episode, it's like, let's just make probably the two most main characters on the show gay or bi or whatever. We're like, what the hell is this? And it was just, I get the feeling that it was just absolute straight out pandering. Kind of like how they talk about, I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched Attack on Titan, but they're doing that kind of pandering now. And they're calling, what's her name? Oh God, she was the head of the science division in Attack on Titan. I can't remember her name. And Loyal says Korra. No, it's that one I should avoid. There was oh Lord, I want to say her name starts with an R or a K sound on Attack on Titan. She's the one who is like she gets completely just way too enthusiastic over science and stuff like that. Haji, yes, okay. So they're basically calling her a non-binary character. I'm like, what? It's like, okay, just because the whole show has managed to go without mentioning that she's a she does not mean that she's not a she. It's like, don't do that to the characters. That's just a distraction. That's just being silly. Goodness gracious. So yeah, okay. Well, we're over the 1 hour mark now, and may as well go ahead and get on my way. Hold on. First, a couple of things from Big Robot News today. I think they only use adult voice actors, and that's why they use women to voice boys. Plus, they can do a lot of voices, so it's cheap to produce. Well, but then again, there are men who are capable of doing boys' voices. Now, I don't know how few and far between those men are. Justin Briner might just be, but you've also got, what's his name? Chris Sabat. Is he another one who has done boys' voices? And I guess it's like the really, really young ones, the ones that need to sound really young. But we're dealing with, in this particular series that I'm watching, we're dealing with a kid who is like of high school age, or at least junior high age. So it doesn't need to be a child who's like got a kid voice. So let's see. I'm a fan of Spider-Man and Amazing Friends. I know Iceman and Biff was voiced by the same person. I don't remember who Biff was. So when they use an adult woman, they can use her for a bunch of voices. Well, yeah. I mean, that's probably. I would hope that she gets paid, per voice as opposed to just, drawing a straight salary. Okay, I think that's going to be it. Thanks to everyone for joining. So basically, let me just wrap up by saying that if you have bought Cyberfrog 2, REKT PLANET, and you have not bought any of the supplementals, here's what I will say. SALAMANDROID Death Sting, absolutely essential. You should pick this up. The other two books, HEARTSICK Horror and Deleted Scenes, you can give them a pass. I mean, these are not. There's nothing in those books that is really essential to understanding the story of what goes on behind REKT PLANET, and what you find in there is kind of underwhelming. Even though it's visually appealing in the case of the HEARTSICK Horror sequence, because you do get a lot of like single page spreads that are like, I think it was, what was it? Was Kelsey Shannon the one who did this one? Or was this, no, this was E.J. Morgus. Art by E.J. Morgus. And I got to tell you, it is really impressive when you realize that there are two people on the planet who are capable of putting out detailed artwork, the likes of which Ethan Van Sciver is known for producing. So, hats off to this guy. I mean, I don't know if he's got any, like, books of his own that he's producing, but that's a hell of a talent right there to be able to pull that kind of stuff off. All right, so that's the basic verdict. Salamandroid, Death Sting, definitely pick that up. The other two, take them or leave them. And I'm going to get out of here and run some errands. So thank you all for watching. I was going to put a redirect on. Oh, hold on. I think I have it all, but so far I've only read part 1 of the first book. Are you talking about? That was Run the Point Night saying, I think I have it all. I've only read part 1 of the first book. Are you talking about part 1 of Blood Honey? So I'm not sure on that. Blood Honey, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, if you've got it all and you've got REKT PLANET, I mean, you may as well go ahead and read the rest, because once you do, I think you're going to want to pick up Red Extermination. I know that when I got to the end of that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to see where this is going next. I just kind of wish the Dark Harvest book wasn't getting in the way, because that's going to be that 10-page like spread of what really went on in the cave that Lily goes into in REKT PLANET. There's a cave that she enters into and she discovers something in there, but it's something that if you've seen my review on REKT PLANET, you've seen where I've just basically said they should that Ethan should just left that whole scene out of her going into the cave, so that this could be something that could still be explored in Dark Harvest, but didn't need to be there. So yeah, all right. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Thank you for watching. BTM Reviews, I think, is running his live stream now. So no, it's probably 20 minutes away. So go ahead and take a lunch break or a dinner break, a bathroom break, bio break of some sort, and then head on over to BTM Reviews, or if Ethan Van Skyver is doing his thing, go check that out. I tried to do a redirect from this stream to BTM Reviews, but I was not able to do that because apparently you have to, BTM Reviews actually would have to approve me as a live redirector in order for me to do a redirect. And so I guess when my stream ends, and then what would pop up next is go over to, this person's live stream next. And I tried to do that, but like I said, I need to be on the approved list. So anyway, but I'm just letting you know in advance. He's got a show coming up at 7 p.m. if I saw correctly. So go check him out, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.